Hello everybody, this is True Crime Podcast from the Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group at Ukraine Crisis Media Center, where we discuss Russian propaganda, hybrid threats, and the influence tools they use. Today's topic of conversation is how Russian propaganda uses memes as a tool of hybrid warfare. This is our episode on a very dark humor, memes as a Russian propaganda tool. Let's get started. Memes now surround us in various dimensions of the information environment: social media, media headlines, conversations with friends, and even official statements. Memes, as a product of the entertainment industry, have become an essential part of political communication. Because of the hybrid nature of modern wars, memes serve as a propaganda soldier. Long before the Kremlin's large-scale aggression against Ukraine, they were at the forefront of the information war between Russia and Ukraine. Because visual images are deeply ingrained in people's minds, the Russian propaganda machine employs memes to spread favorable narratives. In this episode, we will identify the characteristics of a political meme during a war, taking a trip through the political satire history, describing and reconstructing the life path of memes in Russian propaganda. This research will teach you about the origins and the significance of memes in the Russian propaganda system. The primary characteristics of memes. Memes, in the context of propaganda, serve to transform messages while retaining their content. These visual images use humor and simplification through techniques like exaggeration and analogy. They encapsulate a community's values and employ emotion to provoke reactions, often aiming to mock their subject. Contextualization makes meme images more accurate and actually makes them even more influential. Because of this trait, there are so many studies on memes. Memes in election campaigns and political protests have been the subject of a lot of research in academic and analytical circles. Even though context helps memes spread, it is also important to think about how they stay popular. When they are most important, most political memes spread quickly. For example, just before the election, the campaign memes of Donald Trump and Pep the Frog were the ones that people searched for the most. In 2020, Trump supporters spread memes called Sleepy Joe about US President Joe Biden. Both memes disappeared quickly, and only occasionally did they come up again. The mysterious meme. Given that the internet is so easy to use, anyone can make their own images and share them instantly through online platforms. Memes spread when people are interested in them, and they are repeated over and over again.
The potential of any meme is that it can not only infect others, but also encourage them to create. An image or a statement provokes people to write reviews, comments, modify it in some way, transform it, and thus promote it. That's why a meme can spread through the information space in a short period of time without any additional effort. It doesn't require a propaganda machine or information resources.
At the same time, meme culture reinforces clip thinking because of how emotional and expressive it is. People who read memes are more likely to believe fake news because they don't take news seriously and read it for fun and relaxation rather than to actually learn something. People don't want to have to think too hard. Instead, they want to focus on feelings and some kind of drama. This makes it harder for people to think critically. Memes in contemporary political culture. Memes have seamlessly transitioned from entertainment to political communication. It's noteworthy that this shift didn't originate from politicians, but was driven by voters' demand to express their political views through memes. These memes have since spread to mainstream social networks like Facebook and Twitter, gaining popularity among the general public. Consequently, politicians, especially in the Western political world, have embraced memes as a means to engage with voters, reflecting the broader trend of individuals expressing political views through social media, including provocation, trolling, and memes. This type of communication, however, has expanded beyond domestic interactions and has reached the international level. The practice of using humour in official interstate communications has even taken a hold. According to Jason Hannon, a researcher at the University of Winnipeg,
embassies resort to trolling in the form of deliberately provocative, short messages that mock external actors, give governments, media, public figures, and often led to the exchange of humorous insults. For example, the Russian embassy in the United Kingdom uses The Simpsons to manipulate news of a missile falling in Poland in 2022. The American embassy in Moscow mocks Russian media for fabricating information about funding LGBT organizations in order to destabilize Russia 2015.
But what is it about memes that make them so appealing for political communication? For starters, they enable us to express complex ideas in a simple and understandable manner. Politicians can reach a large audience, particularly the younger generation, who are typically uninterested in politics. Military publicity. Visual images may appear to be a product of the internet warfare era today. However, we must remember that propaganda has been a constant companion to wars for thousands of years. The goal of a military propaganda operation is to create a positive image of our own fellow citizens or allies by disseminating high symbols, such as the national flag, coat of arms, or the national anthem. This awakens the collective feeling of patriotism, solidarity, and self-sacrifice that are required during wartime. Military propaganda, on the other hand, ruthlessly humiliates and ridicules the enemy. The antagonist is endowed with a variety of derogatory epithets and characteristics. The antagonist is blamed for all disagreements and, more importantly, for starting the war. Historical context for caricature in war. Think of caricatures as the grandparents of memes. Back in the 17th century, Sir Thomas Browne, a doctor and writer, introduced the term caricature. He described them as drawings that exaggerated a person's unique traits, like cleverness, silliness, or sneakiness, by distorting their facial features and body proportions. This idea was influenced by the physiognomy and pseudoscience, claiming that a person's character can be judged by their face. As newspapers become popular in the 18th and 19th centuries, caricatures became a big part of visual culture in Europe. During World War I, political cartoonists had a heyday. They shifted from humour to a more serious tone, becoming a part of military propaganda, because their main job was to motivate people to fight the enemy. To spread their messages to the enemy soldiers and civilians, they used various methods, including airplanes, balloons, and even artillery shells. Many governments quickly recognized the value of colorful symbols and images in mobilization efforts. A 1914 military poster depicting Lord Kitchener calling for recruits during World War I, Britain's Lord Kitchener Wants You, is one of the earliest examples of a popular political meme. Artist James Montgomery later adapted the image for an American audience. This is how Uncle Sam and the iconic I Want You became a well-known patriotic symbol with a call to action. It was during this time that the practice of depicting nations as animals became popular as well. Cartoonists use grotesque plots of famous myths, epics, and fables to hyperbolize the negative features of enemy nations and their national character. Animalistic images contributed to the mythologization of public perceptions of foreign policy and the formation of persistent negative stereotypes. The origins of Russian military memes. Caricature images popular in 1914 to 1918 were again widely used in the Second World War and Cold War propaganda. Some of them continued to shape contemporary perceptions of each other in the West and the East. The image of a pig was frequently used by Entente propaganda to portray Germans. In this way, the German people were associated with the human vices that this domestic animal represented in European culture. One example is,
"No pork until these pigs are killed," reads a Second World War American poster.
Russia chose to use the image of Germans created by the Allies during World War II, and today the pig character dominates the image of the collective Ukrainian, as Russian propaganda hint at the tendency of Ukrainians to fascism. During the Cold War, Soviet cartoonists actively promoted the theme of the restoration of fascism in the West.
The audience of Russian state television, which pours sarcasm on the enemies surrounding the country, is the audience of yesterday's Kukriniks consumers, right the authors of state laughter. Stalinism and the comic.
The function of memes in Z discourse. Military propaganda rules were broken by the stories told by the Kremlin on the eve of the large-scale invasion and in the first few weeks of the hot part of the war. Most Russian soldiers who crossed the border on February 24, 2022 were familiar with propaganda slogans like
"On the brotherly people"
and
a bunch of Ukraine-fascists who seized power.
So therefore little was known about the enemy that most Russians couldn't digest the goals of the so-called special military operation that Putin announced. This cruel joke was played on Moscow. From the first days of the invasion, the reality that the occupying forces faced showed that the Russian TV's long-held ideas about Ukraine were in fact wrong. This caused cognitive dissonance in the mind of the Russian people, which led to a drop in troop motivation and a high number of soldiers who refused to go on combat missions. In fact, it wasn't until the first plan to take over all of Ukraine failed that the Russian state propagandists started putting together a common set of ideas for the war. In order to make a new image of the Ukrainian enemy, the Russian propaganda machine had to start from, scratch. Memes became the foundation of the new language of the SMO, Special Military Operations so-called, era. Under these conditions, they became tired Russian propaganda cliches.
"Where were you for 8 years when Donbass was bombed? We were left with no other choice. Not everything is so clear. We don't know the whole truth. A gesture of goodwill."
And so on. The characteristic of Z memes.
Imposing modern contexts on Soviet agitprop products, reproduction of Soviet posters as artistic compositions and slogans, self-criticism is limited.
To increase the regime's adaptability to political upheaval, the Kremlin leaves few opportunities for letting off steam. The so-called non-systematic Telegram channels remain the last media platforms for expressing dissatisfaction with the government through satire. The elimination of public leaders of potential right-wing radical protests is a top priority for Kremlin technologists. However, the Russian security forces do not appear to see the meme protests of the PMC supporters of Wagner or Strelkov-Girkin as a significant threat. So, should we scream or cry? In summary, we can reach the following conclusions. Memes are known for their simplicity, emotional impact, and relevance to current events. They serve as a popular means of communication. Second, Russian political satire memes draw inspiration from established patterns. They often use imagery and themes from Soviet anti-Western satire and World War II propaganda. Notably, they frequently portray Ukrainians using German Nazi symbols. 3. Russian media blurs the distinction between traditional political cartoons and memes. This blending of humor from all segments of society allows propagandists to create a false impression of popularity for their narratives. 4. Satirical techniques are employed to enhance the image of the Russian government. Memes and caricatures are used to downplay Kremlin failures while exaggerating Ukraine's losses. And 5. Russia utilizes Western social media to disseminate favorable narratives, especially during times of conflict. Memes, known for their rapid spread, serve as effective carriers of information embedded within visual content, often aimed at discrediting Ukraine.